For thousands of years, the legend of Atlantis has lived in the minds of explorers, philosophers, scientists, and dreamers. Some imagine it as a technologically advanced utopia, glowing with crystal towers and clean energy. Others picture a mystical empire ruled by priest kings with knowledge beyond human understanding. And still others think Atlantis was nothing more than an allegory, a moral lesson hidden inside a myth. But today, I want to take you on a calm, slow journey. A journey through the story of Atlantis as it was told, retold, interpreted, and reconstructed across centuries. A story about ambition, pride, knowledge, power, and the ocean that eventually swallowed it all. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into the world of Atlantis, not just as a lost city, but as a symbol of humanity's eternal search for meaning. The very first recorded mention of Atlantis appears in two works written by the ancient Greek philosopher Plato around 360 BC. These works are called Timaeus and Critias. No earlier sources mention Atlantis. No older myths describe it. No poets or priests before Plato wrote of a grand oceanic empire. For this reason, some scholars believe Plato invented Atlantis as a philosophical metaphor. But others argue that he recorded a real ancient memory, a story whispered through generations, finally reaching him through his teacher Solon. In the dialogues, Plato describes Atlantis as a mighty naval power that existed 9,000 years before his time. That places Atlantis more than 11,000 years in our past, well before any known civilization. According to Plato, the Atlanteans lived on a great island beyond the Pillars of Heracles, or what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. This placed Atlantis somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. The island was larger than Libya and Asia combined, a vast land, rich in resources, forests, mountains, rivers, and fertile soil. At the center of the island stood a magnificent capital city made of concentric rings, one ring of land, one of water, repeating outward like ripples. Bridges connected these rings, and canals ran through them, allowing ships to pass from the ocean straight into the heart of the city. The Atlanteans possessed enormous wealth. Their temples were covered in silver, gold, and a mysterious metal called orichalcum, said to shine like fire. They had advanced engineering, great armies, and powerful kings descended from the god Poseidon himself. But Atlantis, according to Plato, eventually became arrogant. Ambition turned to greed. Wisdom turned to domination. And when the Atlanteans set their sights on conquering the world, the gods decided to stop them. In a single day and night of misfortune, Atlantis sank beneath the ocean. That is the core of Plato's story, a moral tale about hubris, national pride, and the consequences of moral decline. But over time, people wondered, what if there was more truth than Plato intended to reveal? What if Atlantis really existed? Human civilizations forget more than they remember. For example, before the 20th century, we had no idea the Bronze Age collapse was a real event. We thought it was mythology. But archaeology proved that around 1200 BCE, entire kingdoms fell within decades. So when people asked if Atlantis might have been real, the question became something deeper. Could Plato have preserved a memory of an ancient catastrophe, a flood, a volcanic eruption, a sunken landmass? Some theories point to the island of Santorini, known in ancient times as Thera. Around 1600 BCE, it suffered a massive volcanic eruption that destroyed large parts of the Minoan civilization. The eruption was so powerful that it created tsunamis, earthquakes, and widespread destruction. The Minoans were technologically advanced for their time, with plumbing, art, and flourishing trade. The similarities are striking. A wealthy island civilization, advanced engineering, a sudden destruction triggered by nature. But Thera was much smaller than Atlantis, and the timeline doesn't match Plato's 9,000 years. So perhaps the myth wasn't about Thera. Others point to the possibility of an island that once existed in the Azores, where underwater structures have been discovered. Some believe these structures resemble roads or walls, though most scientists argue they are natural formations. There's also the idea that Atlantis was not in the ocean at all, but in North Africa, near the Sahara Desert. The Rikat structure, also known as the Eye of the Sahara, looks eerily similar to the concentric rings Plato described. The area even shows evidence of ancient rivers and lakes. Could this circular geological formation be what remains of an ancient city? Or maybe Atlantis was never a single place, but a blend of memories, floods, disasters, lost cultures merged into one powerful legend. Let's step away from speculation and enter the world of imagination, inspired by Plato's descriptions. What might life have felt like in Atlantis? Imagine waking up to the sound of waves echoing through the grand canals of the capital. The air smells of salt and blooming tropical flowers. Traders from distant lands arrive with exotic goods, spices, metals, fabrics, animals. Ships glide through the waterways, their sails shimmering with dyes unknown to the outside world. The Atlanteans prized knowledge. They studied astronomy, mathematics, agriculture, and architecture. Their buildings were crafted from stone, metal, and crystal, not because they worshipped luxury, but because they believed beauty was a reflection of divine order. At the center of the city rose a towering temple dedicated to Poseidon. It gleamed with precious metals, and inside stood a giant statue of the god riding 6-winged horses. Torches filled the hall with warm, golden light. Priests recited hymns carved into ancient tablets. And yet, despite their achievements, there was a growing sense of unrest. The ruling class became obsessed with expansion. Warships grew larger. Armies grew stronger. Conquest began to overshadow wisdom. Atlantis was rising, but also beginning to fall. Plato tells us that the downfall of Atlantis was sudden, in a single day and night. What could cause such instant destruction? Perhaps earthquakes. Perhaps volcanic eruptions. Perhaps massive tsunamis. Perhaps all three at once. Imagine the moment it began. The ocean trembles. Birds panic and flee. Animals run inland. The ground beneath the capital starts to crack. Citizens rush through the grand rings of the city, confused and terrified. The bridges shake as water rises through the canals. The temple of Poseidon crumbles as the earth splits open. Waves crash over the outer districts, pulling homes and ships into the sea. And then, in a final roar, the island collapses. The ocean swallows everything: land, cities, statues, memories. What was once a thriving civilization becomes a silent ruin hidden beneath the waves. Whether Atlantis existed or not, its message remains powerful. It reminds us that civilizations rise, but they also fall. That nature can be unpredictable and unforgiving. That human ambition, when unchecked, leads to ruin. And perhaps that somewhere in our distant past, humanity lived through events so catastrophic that they were remembered for thousands of years, eventually turning into myths. Atlantis teaches us humility. It teaches us wonder. It invites us to keep searching for truth, not just in the physical world, but in the stories we tell about ourselves. Maybe Atlantis never existed. Or maybe it lies hidden at the bottom of the Atlantic, waiting to be discovered. Either way, the legend lives on deeper than the ocean, older than memory, stronger than time.